Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. I'm Emma Wren. I'm our natural flood management lead at Mott MacDonald, and I'm also the lead author of the new Syria Natural Flood Management Manual that we've been producing in the UK over the last couple of years. And I'm really passionate about all things linked to rivers and the environment and community. So this sort of working with nature and nature-based solutions is really right up my street. And it's been a really great honour to lead the development of this new manual. And I'm going to share a few highlights with you now, and in particular how we worked in partnership across the industry to make this happen. Work this out. Excellent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean by natural flood management and our vision for this manual. Then a bit about our partnership approach, and then give you a bit of an overview of what's in the manual, and then some of my thoughts on the outcomes and looking forward. So when I'm talking about natural flood management, I'm aware it's quite a UK-centric term, but we're talking about using nature-based solutions across the catchment or the landscape to protect, restore or mimic the natural functions of catchments, floodplains, rivers and the coast. It's essentially one potential approach to manage the risk of flooding. We need to remember that it is just one different one solution, and it needs to be used in conjunction with other solutions, ones that both reduce the risk of flooding and the likelihood of flooding. So let's think about all the different options, be that flood walls, nature-based solutions, improved education, flood warning, recovery, resilience type measures. And I think natural flood management in the UK is perhaps been seen at some points as a little bit like the silver bullet that's going to solve all of our flooding issues, and I definitely don't want to make out that that's the case. We need to remember that flooding is a natural hydrological process, and that we've modified all of our floodplains significantly by building on them, and we've got lots of communities in places that are prone to flooding, and we've also got the impacts of a warming climate to contend with. So we need to learn to live with this risk of flooding, and nature-based solutions are a key tool to help with that, and to help us also deliver that reduced flood risk, but also deliver many multiple benefits as well, which is a key tenet of the whole nature-based solutions approach. So the manual was produced by Syria, which is an industry body in the UK, and it's got three main aims. So firstly, it's to move natural flood management into the delivery phase. There was already and provide guidance on how to deliver NFM, so a really practical guide. It was largely considered that a lot of the sort of why do it has sort of been covered, and so next this practical guide is needed. Secondly, to provide confidence in natural flood management by bringing our collective understanding into a single place, and provide a manual that's simple to use and widely applicable. And thirdly, to ensure that the best outcomes are delivered, giving more certainty and therefore over time more credibility to natural flood management as a flood risk management tool. So in terms of a timeline, we started this project in autumn 2019, and we brought together a consortium that I'll say a bit more about in a second. And then we did an extensive scoping exercise with a literature review, and there was a project steering group with 30 people from right across the industry in the UK to help scope the contents of this manual. Then there was some extensive engagement towards the end of 2020, a whole series of workshops and surveys and interviews with people that had delivered natural flood management on the ground or been involved. And then a lot of an extensive drafting exercise. So we had 3 different drafts, and they were all reviewed by the project steering group, and they provided an inordinate amount of comments that were all conflicting, and had to work our way through those. And we launched this manual in May this year. So it's an online event that was really well attended. So next we're sort of trying to bed this in, share it with people, and try and find out how it's landed really, and what we can do next to improve things. So in terms of bringing the group together that produced this manual, you might have actually spotted this photograph earlier in Joe's presentation. So the group that we got together were Mott MacDonald, ICASP at the University of Leeds, at the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust, and the River Restoration Centre, which is a UK group. And we partly came together through a range of previous work. So we'd all worked together, well, the three, beside the River Restoration Centre, we'd all worked together extensively on this Colling and Beck project that was shown here, which was a natural flood management project, sort of a pilot project sponsored by the UK government. And Mott MacDonald had been extensively involved in getting that project off the ground. The Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust were leading it as a sort of they're a charitable body based here in Yorkshire, and ICASP from the university were helping with the monitoring, and through that things evolved, and we were also involved in bringing together the Yorkshire Natural Flood Management Community of Practice that Joe talked about, and this is actually one of their events where I was really proud to show people around the Colling and Beck catchment and the work that we've done there. And that Yorkshire NFM Community of Practice is just a fantastic way to bring practitioners together from right across, people doing natural flood management right across Yorkshire and beyond, to come and share ideas of what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, what we're going to try next. And through that, we've developed these relationships that have led to us being successful and being the team that for Syria have developed this natural flood management manual. So in terms of this slide, just having all those different perspectives. So we have the project delivery team perspective, but then we brought in all of this wider engagement with the workshops and case studies, and we were able to use that Yorkshire community of practice to help with some of that engagement. And also the River Restoration Centre have an annual conference, we were able to use that. But then we had this steering group that brought in the UK flood regulators, the UK environmental regulators, so we have different ones in the different constituent parts of the UK. And then various infrastructure asset owners like water companies, railways, roads, and various representatives from private industry and universities as well. So a lot of people have been involved. And then just to give you a little bit of a flavour of what this document is. So the target audience was very much aimed at people, communities on the ground, perhaps landowners, that are interested in doing something, but perhaps don't really know where to start. So it needed to be really comprehensive, which is a massive challenge, but also simple to use. So it's essentially divided up into different parts with an increasing level of detail. And we tried to make it really visual. So this slide is sort of showing the different natural flood management measures that we and how we what we call them in the manual, and some of them are subdivided into different measure types, and it shows that we need to work right across the landscape and use a range of different measures. And it's complicated by the fact that some of these techniques, things like a leaky barrier, can be used across the river, but it can also be used in the landscape to store water. So we've got, the terminology was a bit of a nightmare, and still is. And we defined the key tenet of the manual was that we defined this natural flood management delivery process, and it's the starting point in the way that the manual is structured. And we identified that the delivery process has 5 key steps. So understand the catchment, select the measures, design the measures, construct and implement them, and then monitor and manage. And it's really important that we've got that work with others right in the centre, because that we see that as the absolutely crucial thing for nature-based solutions, that you need to work with everyone. And it's also shown as a circular process, being that you might not always start at the start. You might need to do some monitoring first, and natural flood management is still very much in its infancy, so we need to make sure that we learn. And it might be that you need to go around the circle several times to deliver a successful project. And also, one of the key things is that the level of detail at any of these stages needs to be proportionate to the overall intended outcome. So there's no point in doing a lot of detail at the start if you haven't got enough money to deliver very many measures. This diagram summarises the early stages in one of these sort of nature-based solutions projects, and it was really quite tricky to work out which order to put these on a piece of paper. But the choice of where to implement natural flood management and which ones to use is really important to the success of the project. So there needs to be a need to understand catchment context, link this to the project's aims, and then choose the sites and which NFM measures to actually employ. And as I said earlier, this is an iterative process, and the exact starting point will vary dependent on who initiates the project, who they're working with, the initial level of funding, and the initial thoughts on the project scale and the desired outcomes. So we always need this creative and holistic thinking, because using nature-based solutions is complicated, and they can provide lots of different wider opportunities. So we need to bring in others, and that needs to be viewed as an opportunity and not a risk. Moving on, the sort of second step was about selecting subcatchments or sites. And this has been something that's been approached in different ways in the UK. So there's been very much a top-down approach from some people and also a bottom-up approach from others. And both have clear merits. Top-down approaches tend to consider the catchment as a whole and work effectively across the catchment to reduce flood risk, maximise those co-benefits, minimise adverse impacts, and mitigate any risks. And bottom-up approaches are based on factors such as land availability, enthusiasm of everyone to get involved, and willingness of partners to get involved. So in the sort of top-down approach, you're being more strategic, and you might think you're going to come up with the best solution, but you might not ever really get started. And in the bottom-up approach, you're more enthusiasm, so you're more likely to get started and actually make something happen. But you might not be able to have the momentum, and you might not do the right thing to start with. So we really need to find a blend of these two approaches and move towards a centre. We can't usually wait till we've got all of the data to make a decision, and it's really valuable to demonstrate to people through some like early pilot sites that this is successful, and it's a way to build trust and enthusiasm and also knowledge about what might work well in different locations. So in terms of selecting measures, one of the things we've done is develop a range of flowcharts to really help people try and select proportionate methods to both select different measures and also understand the catchment hydrology. So this one is, pretty high level. It's, if there is a runoff issue, then work your way through and see if you can gives a broad indication of which types of measures to use, and the same for if there's a river management issue. River management issue, and obviously these are really high level, and they won't always give the best answer, but it's starting to unravel things for people and giving a broad indication of what might work where. So they're all aimed to get people thinking and not just immediately trying to solve the issue of flooding at the location where it's the problem, but looking further upstream first. So this, in terms of more detail about the actual natural flood management measures, there's four that are given more detail in the manual at the moment and given more detailed guidance. Hopefully more can be added at a later date. So the four measures included at the moment are runoff management, runoff storage, leaky barriers, and floodplain reconnection. And shown in text on there are the runoff, the measure types. So it's the sort of subtypes that have been included for each of those. So, for example, for runoff storage, there's ponds, scrapes, swales, and bunds. And it's hope that, yeah, it's definitely hope that the others can be added at a later date. But for each of those priority measures at the moment, there is measure-specific guidance. So there's information on how to select the measured type, some of those flow charts. We have things like descriptions of good locations and poor locations, and the sort of health and safety implications for choosing those measure types. And then more detailed information on design, construction and implementation, and monitoring and management of those measures. And just to give a few examples, then for the design considerations, for example, for a runoff pathway, we've got a diagram that gives some indication of what it might look like and some of the sort of simple rules that you might employ if you're designing that type of measure. So here's one for a leaky barrier on a runoff pathway. So it's a multi-stack log leaky barrier with a live willow interwoven between the logs. And here's the example for a pond and how you might think about setting that into the landscape and designing that. And we've created some of these one-page pullouts. Sort of the idea is that you take them out and talk about them with the people that you're thinking about implementing natural flood management with. So this is the one for runoff management, and it's got on there sort of things that you might be, different measures you might be able to combine it with, and design notes and things like that. And then this is sort of to summarize a massive part of the manual into one slide. There are also chapters on some of the overarching issues with like a natural flood management spin on them. So we've got a whole section on hydrology and hydraulics in terms of designing the measures, the costs and benefits, and the environmental considerations. And then there's more detailed chapters on those NFM delivery steps on design and materials, construction and implementation, and monitoring and management. So just to summarize, this natural flood management manual is a step on a journey, and it gives a snapshot in time. We're moving now, I feel, from the learning to the doing. And I really hope that this manual in the UK and hopefully further is the start of something massive. I want us to start to see these nature-based solutions across the landscape by default, because we all need to take action, and it's about doing what we can right now. So I hope that the new manual will improve three things. Firstly, improve confidence. That will increase the confidence in these natural flood management techniques as a flood management tool, and make it easier to implement, and in particular empowering the community to own and take action on local issues. Secondly, that it will improve outcomes for everyone and help us tackle everything together and not consider issues in isolation. The manual hopefully makes it's easier to understand the right measure for a given location and how to deliver nature-based solutions to maximise co-benefits for the wider environment and society. And thirdly, to improve uptake at all scales and right across catchments and by all groups of people. So overall, I really hope that this manual is going to be a springboard that launches natural flood management to be mainstream and be employed consistently and at scale across the country to help us collectively address the climate and nature emergencies. Thank you.
you, Emma. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, huge amount of work and very useful. I was particularly intrigued by the, let's say, decision making, I mean, flow chart that we had there. It seemed, I mean, particularly focused on the problem, I mean, we saw. Is there a section where you connect that or to the cost, to the larger cost benefit analysis that discussing in a sense? And so trying, I mean, to suggest, I mean, what is the best solution, not just to resolve the problem, but also in terms of having the highest benefits. I mean, also not just in terms of, for example, run-up production, but also ecosystem services or these parts.
Yes, I guess yes and no. The flow charts are very quite simple. They put down things that are perhaps quite obvious to someone that understands about natural flow management, but perhaps are less obvious to less obvious to someone that understands less. In terms of linking that to wider outcomes, I guess the information is all there, but we haven't synthesized it down into anything as simple as that because it's probably far too complicated to try. But that will be really good.
So very interesting work. I'm Giriraj from IWMI Sri Lanka. So when you mentioned in the concept framework, you highlighted the local knowledge in the framework. And often when we set this similar manual in other regions, the challenges is about the governance and institutional arrangement, because it has to build a local-led process. It cannot be, like you mentioned, also the top-down and the bottom-up thinking around. So in the chapter, when I don't really see the aspects of governance and institutional structure, because you have different governance structure exist in the scale when you do the flood management. So is there something you are looking at in the flood management manual? That is one. And increasingly the farmers or the community might see this is what is that trade-off from the social and economic benefits of doing this process. So what are your thoughts on that?
So in terms of the institutional framework, that isn't really covered. That's not really covered in the manual beyond saying that you need to appreciate that and understand that when you're embarking on a project and think about consulting with those people and getting them involved into the project. And the second one was about farm.
The community's trade-off from doing this, it's more like a top-down flood management. So what is really the community will get benefit from that? Are we looking at co-benefits of mitigation from the adaptation? We are doing that, you know.
So there's definitely a push in the UK for public money to be spent on public services, and so we're hopeful that policy is almost going to catch up a little bit and enable landowners to be funded to implement some of these nature-based solutions. But that doesn't mean that people aren't already trying to do it, because they recognise that it's beneficial for the community that they live in. And there are lots of community groups in the UK trying to implement nature-based solutions. And so hopefully this manual really helps them, and we want to support them and get more things going. So yeah, hopefully this makes it easier.
Thank you, Emma.